Every day at noon in Valletta, a cannon fires across the Grand Harbor. I've stood in the upper Baracca Gardens and watched it, the gunners going through their drill, the report echoing off the fortifications, and the smoke drifting out over water that has seen Phoenician traders, Ottoman war galleys, and Allied convoys. The city has kept this ritual in one form or another since the age of the Knights, and it makes a fitting introduction to Malta because this is a place most of us in Canada can barely picture, and it turns out to be one of the most history-dense places on Earth. That's the trip. While winter is still doing its worst back home, we'll be somewhere the sun shows up almost every day, standing inside 7,000 years of history. Here's how it works. We base ourselves in Valletta for 6 nights, one hotel, no packing and repacking, and we let the island come to us. That's the quiet advantage of Malta. Everything is within about an hour. Across Grand Harbor sit the 3 cities, older than Valletta itself. A ferry ride to the northwest is Gozo, Malta's slower, more rural sister island. And to the south, the megalithic temples and the Blue Grotto. Inland, the walled city of Mdina. Each day, we head out in a different direction, and each evening we come back to the same bed with time for a drink on a bastion wall before dinner. This is the part that surprises people. Unless you majored in European history, you probably don't know that Malta holds some of the oldest freestanding structures on the planet. Hagarjim was built around 3600 BCE, before Stonehenge, before the pyramids at Giza. Its limestone blocks are so massive that the question of how they were moved still isn't settled. On the summer solstice, the first light of dawn enters a chamber and strikes a particular stone. Design or coincidence? Nobody can say for certain. I find that honesty refreshing. Not everything here has been explained, and the archaeologists admit it. Then there's Hal Saflieni Hypogeum, the only prehistoric underground temple ever discovered, anywhere. Carved into the living rock around 4000 BC, it's a warren of chambers where the remains of thousands were laid to rest. Entry is strictly rationed to protect it, and tickets are famously hard to come by, so we've secured our slots in advance, entering in 2 small groups. Inside, the silence is total. There's a space called the Oracle Room that carries the human voice in ways acoustic engineers still can't fully account for. You don't rush a place like this. You stand in it and you let it work on you. Valletta exists because of a siege. In 1565, 500 Knights of St. John and 5,000 Maltese held off an Ottoman force of 40,000, one of the great last stands in European history. The city that rose afterward was built by gentlemen, for gentlemen, and it doesn't do subtle. We'll start at the Auberge de Castille, at the highest point in town, then walk the streets the Knights laid out on a grid 4.5 centuries before anyone thought grids were modern. St. John's Co-Cathedral is the lesson in how this place thinks. From the outside, it's austere, plain stone built by warriors. Step inside and it's an explosion of Baroque excess. Carved limestone walls, a floor paved with marble tombs, and in the oratory, Caravaggio's The Beheading of St. John the Baptist, the largest canvas he ever painted, and the only one he ever signed. He was on the run from a murder charge in Rome when he painted it here. Malta collects stories like that. Then we cross the harbor to the 3 cities, Vittoriosa, Sanglia, and Cospicua, where the Knights first landed, older and rougher around the edges than the capital. Fort St. Angelo still dominates the waterfront, and the narrow streets twist past palaces and old wine cellars where ordinary Maltese life carries on among the monuments. This is where I'd tell you to slow down and look up. The enclosed wooden balconies, the saints in their niches on street corners, the laundry strung between fortress walls. History here isn't behind glass. People live in it. The ferry to Gozo takes about 25 minutes, and it resets the clock. Gozotans will tell you their island moves differently, and they're right. It's greener, quieter, more rural, the kind of place where the day organizes itself around lunch. We'll visit Gigantia temples, whose name comes from the Maltese word for giants, because for centuries nobody could believe humans had raised 50-ton slabs without machinery. We'll climb the Cittadella, the fortified core where all of Gozo once sheltered at night against corsair raids. The view from the ramparts takes in the whole island, and the climb is worth it. Then the coast, Schlendi Bay, a narrow inlet flanked by cliffs riddled with caves, and Duera, a shoreline shaped by collapsed sea caverns where the knights once posted guards on a single offshore rock to protect a plant they believed could heal battle wounds. The inland sea here, a lagoon connected to the open Mediterranean by a natural tunnel through the cliff, is still used by fishermen, the same way it has been for generations. Gozo isn't a list of sights, it's a rhythm. We'll ferry back in the late afternoon, having absorbed some of it. Some of what I love best about Malta doesn't ask anything of you at all. Marsaxlokk is a fishing village on the southeast coast where the Lutzu boats, painted in their primary colors, each with the eye of Osiris on the bow, a tradition the Phoenicians left behind. They bob at their moorings all along the quay. The Sunday market spills along the waterfront as well. We'll wander it and then carry on to the Blue Grotto, where light bouncing off the pale seabed turns the water an electric blue. If the sea is calm, small boats slip right through the caves. And then Mdina, the silent city, walled, medieval, almost entirely car-free, sitting on its ridge looking out over everything Malta has become. It earns the name after the day trippers leave, when the only sound is footsteps on limestone. Along the way, we'll eat well. Malta does food without fuss. Rabbit stewed slowly in wine, fresh fish off the boats at Marsaxlokk, and pastizi, the flaky ricotta pastries the Maltese treat as a birthright. And we've built in a fully free day near the end, because by then you'll have your own list. The museum you passed, the bastion you wanted to walk, or simply a table in the sun with a glass of local wine. That last option is entirely legitimate. Malta sits at the crossroads of the Mediterranean, and for 7,000 years, everyone has passed through. For 1 week, so will we, a small group of curious Canadians taking it at a pace that leaves room to actually think about what we're seeing, with time to talk about it together at the end of each day. That's how we travel at Wheel and Anchor, and I hope you'll join us.